Welcome everyone. My name is Andrew Marinus, and I work just across the street, basically, from Attorney General Gonzales over at Vanderbilt in the athletic department there, and work on the Sports and Society initiative at Vanderbilt. And so I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today for this terrific panel with Latino Trailblazers and leaders in sports. And we were talking about this before we got started, but before we start the panel, just wanted to acknowledge the passing of a legendary figure in sports today, Henry Aaron, the home run king. And I know this is a sad day in sports for a lot of people, and I've seen so many beautiful tributes to Hank Aaron on Twitter and Facebook today. Someone that was born in Wisconsin. I remember him from the last couple of years of his career as a Milwaukee Brewer. Our panelists today are all distinguished leaders in their fields, joining us from all over the country. And before I turn the program over to Jesus, who's launching our Esquina officially today, I'll introduce the panelists. So first, over at Belmont University here in Nashville, we have former U.S. Attorney General Alberto Gonzales, who is really involved with an effort to bring Major League Baseball to Nashville. And as a baseball fan, I'm excited about that possibility. And Mr. Gonzales was the first Latino Attorney General in U.S. history. Sticking with baseball, we have Omar Minaya, former general manager of the New York Mets and the Montreal Expos, also executive with San Diego Padres. And Omar was the first Latino general manager in Major League Baseball history. And staying in pro sports, moving up to Minnesota, welcome Gersson Rosas, the president of the Minnesota Timberwolves, the first Latino general manager in NBA history. And then finally, last but not least, moving over to college sports. And I'm fortunate enough to work for the first woman athletic director in the Southeastern Conference, the first Black woman athletic director in the SEC as well, Candace Lee. We have Gloria Nevarez, who is the commissioner of the West Coast Conference and the first Latina commissioner in college sports history. So just unbelievable panel. Jesus Ortiz from our Esquina will be the moderator. And Jesus and I go back as friends to 1998, when I was the media relations manager for the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, their first season. Jesus was covering the team for the Bradenton Herald. We were both pretty young, a little scared, maybe not quite understanding what we were doing. We became fast friends. We only knew each other in person for that 1 year, but we've been really close friends ever since. He was in my wedding. So Jesus, it's great to be invited to be part of this, and take it away.
Well, thank you very much. And as you mentioned, Andrew, this is a very sad day in the country, one of our greatest icons. I tried to call Felipe Alou before this because Hank Aaron really touched a lot of people. He helped mentor a man Omar respects tremendously, two of the greatest managers in baseball history, Dusty Baker and Felipe Alou. And thank you for acknowledging and honoring the legacy of Hank Aaron. And we had to mention that because it's important. Our Esquina aspires to amplify Latino voices and Latino stories in sports. We're so excited. I have relationships with most of the panelists over the years, and throughout my career in newspaper covering baseball, 25 years, I've loved telling the Latino story. I love having people see the value that we bring and the intelligence, the leadership skills. And with all the folks on this panel, I'm so grateful because Omar Minaya, a Dominicano raised in Queens, Gersson Rosas, a Colombiano raised in Houston, Attorney General Gonzales from Humboldt, Texas, which is right near my house, who, if I remember correctly, and I wrote about this in my book on the Astros, like his first tickets to the Astros were won because he had straight A's. Okay, one of the brightest minds to ever come out of Humboldt, Texas, out of Houston, out of Texas, the first Latino Attorney General in the United States. And I'm so honored. I still have an autograph card he gave me. And one of my favorite calls I ever got in spring training was from Attorney General Gonzales. And And also Gloria Nevarez, a very talented basketball player, college basketball player, the first Latina commissioner in Division I history. As a father of 3 daughters who are athletes, I'm so grateful to have Gloria clear the path so that they can see that you could be a Gloria Nevarez, you could be a Kim Eng. These are all leaders who exemplify the brain power within the Latino community. So thank you very much for joining us. I'm very grateful. I will start by asking each panelist to share a little bit about your life story and how you got to be the first Latino or Latina in your perspective roles. We'll start, let's start in alphabetical order. Gersson, I think that's you.
Thank you, Jesus. It's a pleasure to be with all of you this morning. Very, very incredible individuals, incredible stories, and it's an honor to be here with you. I'll tell you a little bit about my background. As Jesus mentioned, I'm an immigrant from Bogota, Colombia, to Houston. Houston had been home, and I was raised in Houston, but had a passion for sports. And as a lot of us know from different parts of the country, it regularly starts with soccer and football. And as I got to Houston, I actually fell in love with baseball. Baseball was my first love. Love the Astros. Love being around it. And in school, I played every sport. And when I played basketball, I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the game. Not just the game per se, but practice, team building, scouting, you name it. It was something that grabbed my heart and let me know that in some shape or form, I wanted to be in this industry. And I'm a realist. Unlike Gloria, I couldn't play in college. I realized I wasn't going to play in the pros. So I sought out to find out what my path was going to be. And I had one foot in coaching, one foot in scouting and trying to figure out what that might look like. And did what all of you have done. And it's worked hard, take advantage of every opportunity to understand the industry. And not only to get an opportunity, but to be prepared for that opportunity. I was fortunate to have an internship with the Houston Rockets coming out of college. I did that for 2 years, thought I had my foot in the door. And Dennis Lindsay, who runs the Utah Jazz, was a great mentor to me. And he said, "Hey, man, you're not ready. 2 years in, you still don't have enough experience." So I ended up leaving the Rockets after 2 years, which shocked my family, and they didn't understand. But I went and I coached high school locally in Houston at Westbury Christian. We were fortunate to have a player that went straight to the NBA and Indy Eby, ironically enough, to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Then I coached at the University of Houston. And through those experiences, I had an understanding of what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. And that was on the scouting side. And growing up, I was fortunate to follow baseball, which was my first love, and see an incredibly talented individual in Omar Minaya become the GM of the Expos and then the Mets, and gave me hope and aspiration that I could be that person in the NBA. There was nobody else that was doing that from Latin American background. And that gave me a lot of passion. Through those coaching experiences, I finally got enough professional experience and credibility to be able to come back to the NBA. And when Rudy Tomjanovich went to the Lakers, he took a bunch of the staff from the Rockets, including an entry-level scout. And I was given the opportunity to come back to the Rockets under Carol Dawson and Dennis Lindsay. I came in as an entry-level scout and was fortunate to work my way up there over the next 17 years through all levels of the front office in the organization up to executive vice president of the organization, and left for a general manager position with the Dallas Mavericks, ended up coming back to Houston, and I joined the Minnesota Timberwolves almost a year and a half ago as the president of basketball operations. And as Jesus and I have gotten the opportunity to speak and really understand this incredible labor of love that he's doing, and the incredible need for us to be able to tell our story and to motivate and inspires others to go forth and do more than what we've done. And that's a responsibility that I take very serious, and it's very personal to me. And this platform, this opportunity to speak with all of you is something that I really value and I appreciate. So to our Esquina, Vanderbilt, Jesus, thank you for the opportunity.
So Attorney General Gonzales, you'd be next on the alphabet.
Well, I really feel like I'm not really qualified to be considered in this group as sort of a Hispanic trailblazer in sports. I've loved sports. Grew up in Houston, a lot of Houston connections here. So I've always been a big sports fan, but in college, I decided that I wanted to pursue another career field, which was, of course, in law, and have had an opportunity primarily because of George W. Bush to be involved in various levels, both at the state and federal level. I currently am the dean of a law school here in Nashville, Tennessee. And about a year and a half ago, I met an individual who was he was examining the Nashville market for possibly bringing Major League Baseball here. And so I was very interested in that because I love Nashville and I love baseball. And so we began looking at the market, talking to people, and ultimately concluded that this is a pretty good market. Obviously, baseball is facing some serious challenges right now with COVID. We've got a collective bargaining agreement that expires at the end of this year. And so baseball is focused on other things other than expansion or even relocation. But nonetheless, we're working hard to sort of lay the foundation and be prepared so that when baseball turns its attention to perhaps looking at expansion or maybe dealing with the Tampa Bay or Oakland situation through relocation, we want to be prepared to do that. And so we've got a good team of advisors that includes Tony La Russa and Dave Stewart, for example. Dave Dabrowski, we've gotten to know very well. Some of you, Omar, you may know Dave Dabrowski, but he's still an advisor. He just, of course, left to go take a position as president of baseball operations for the Phillies. Being in Music City, Nashville, we have quite an impressive roster of musical talent and investors and people who are interested in Nashville bringing a baseball team. So we've got Justin Timberlake and Larry Gatlin and Luke Combs. If you're a country music individual, you might recognize some of these names. So Tim Corbin is also part of our effort. The coach of the Vanderbilt Commodores, who won the college baseball World Series last year. So we've got a strong group. This is probably a 4 or 5 year effort, but it's something that I find very interesting and fascinating and challenging and complex, which attracts my attention. And I'm just delighted to be part of it, and hopefully aspire to be one day one of the great pioneers like yourselves in sports. So thank you very much for Jesus for including me on this panel. Andrew, I know this program, sports is at Vanderbilt is very important. I appreciate the opportunity to be part of it. Thank you.
I forgot to draw the connection. Omar and Attorney General Gonzales, you both work and know President George W. Bush somewhat well. So you're both connected through there, and I'm sure at one of the receptions at the White House, I think I'm sure you guys probably met before, but yeah, so I didn't draw that connection to right now. You both work for George W. Bush.
So Omar, were you at the White House?
Yes, I've been at the White House. Well, when he was there, of course.
Okay. Well, have we met? I'm sorry, I don't remember.
You know what? We might have crossed paths, I guess, in one of those rooms. But I was fortunate to be there with the President, Laura. We've had different times he would invite me. As you know, his passion for baseball, it's above and beyond. I knew him when he came from, I believe, from Midland, when he first came over. And we stay friends, and he just loves baseball. And and similar to, I think we all can see that he got into politics, but I think originally, I think he wanted to be commissioner before he wanted to be the governor of Texas. And like I said, I'm very fond of him, and I will tell you that I do remember when he nominated you, and you are a trailblazer, and it was inspiring to all of us, and to all those young kids that are going to be lawyers, that he gave you the opportunity,
That's
but
right.
you paved the way.
If I can just say one more thing, when I was general counsel and he was governor of Texas, I would go over to the governor's office and we'd plop down on the couch, and we'd always talk about three things. We would talk about policy, politics, and baseball. And he had this huge wooden glass cabinet full of signed autographed baseballs. And I was so jealous of that. But you're right, a huge baseball fan.
Yes, like I said, he's we've had many stories together, and the thing about him is, Gersson, he didn't want to talk about the major league guys. He wanted to talk about that young kid from Colombia, Venezuela, Dominican, that was an A-ball, and he wanted to know about the trainer. He wants to know. I mean, you know how he is, Alberto. He would go deep. He was talking about, hey, show me this prospect. And then he would say, well, I don't think he can play. I said, well, how do you know he can play? And then we will argue.
Okay, you're
Omar, right. Thank you for sharing that. Omar, tell us a little bit about your story. You're Dominicano from Queens who becomes the first Latino general manager in Major League Baseball history. And part of that story begins in Arlington with a team owned by a man who eventually became President George W. Bush.
Well, it's funny because after listening to Gersson journey and path, and there was a lot of similarities. The opportunity. Well, first of all, I migrated. My parents migrated from the Dominican to Jackson Heights, Corona, and for immigrant, and went to public school in New York City. And those days you grew up and you play ball, you play stick ball in the streets, and you play all four sports. You played in the schoolyard, in the concrete schoolyard. And to me, baseball has always been a passion. I love those sports. To me, actually playing basketball, baseball, all those things were kind of what we love to do. It wasn't, it was an era that we all lived. It wasn't about a play date that we shared, we have now with our kids. We just play, we live. I like to say that I am a child of the 7 train, the 7 line. For those of you that have a little bit of idea of New York, 7 line is the most diverse line in the train line in the world. It's a great growing up in New York, the 7 line is diverse, all stops, and I am a child of that diversity. I'm a child of growing up with different people, different ideas, different food, and that's what I grew up with that. I ended up, I wanted to play professional baseball. That's what we did. That's what a Dominican kid wanted to do. I wanted to be Willie Mays or Hank Aaron or Roberto Clemente. I would play in the outfield. That's what I wanted to do. In the end, I did play. I wasn't that great. I only got as high as A-ball, and then went on to play in Europe. And what a great experience to learn Europe, and really changed me, formed me in so many ways. Informed me as far as the world, formed me as far as arts, formed me as far as politics, the diversity of Italy in those days, and brought that back to New York. When I came back, ended up taking a scouting job, similar to Gersson, scouting. And for 2 years, I scouted and coached, and they told me, which one you want? You want to coach? You want to scout? You want to coach? And in the end, I was very fortunate. There was a fellow by the name of Sandy Johnson who gave me a job, an opportunity with Texas. And in Texas, he said, hey, what do you want to do? And I ended up saying, look, scouting, this is what it is. There's something about scouting. There's something about evaluation that really attracted me. Fortunate enough, along the way, was able to, I used the word, I signed some players, but I wasn't that smart. So Sammy Sosa was one of my first signed. And it wasn't that I was that smart, because, we negotiated. Gersson, you will love this. We negotiated for 3 or 4 hours. I wanted to offer him $3,000. He wanted $4,000. And we negotiated for 4 hours to settle at $3,500. Well, It ended up working out pretty good for me and for him. And then I started my path, scouting. And then, of course, with the years with the Rangers, great players. If you were in Houston, you knew the Texas Rangers had all those great players over the years, worked with great people. Juan Gonzalez, Sammy Sosa, the list goes on and on and on. We believed in, and I was raised and taught by really good people that taught me the game. And it's about mentorship. In those days, it's who was teaching you. So I was fortunate to do that, and then eventually came back to New York to be the Mets assistant GM, and then went to my Commissioner Seelig, who was great at giving people opportunities and diversity, made me the first general manager, Hispanic general manager. I did that with the Expos, in another great city, Montreal. So this whole path of mine has been always about people giving me an opportunity. And I always share this with others because us that are in leadership, and this panel is a leadership group, it's about us giving back to those that are coming behind us. That's what Hank Aaron was all about. And it's important that in this day, we remember that. Now, how do you give back? I love when I'm in an office, Gersson, and everybody here. I love when I'm in an office. Who's the new employee? Who's the young person that come in? That could be my kid. I want to be able to get to know the young, and I think that's President Bush too. He wants to get to know who are the lowest person, and I use the word lowest. Who are the young energy, the young people coming in, and how can we impact them for them to be leaders? And that's how I was brought in. Guys that you mentioned the names, Al Campanis, who unfortunately did, but Al Campanis spent time with me, and Paul Richards, famous names that spent time with me. President Bush, other people, and I'm all about my path to where I got to is because others gave me opportunity. And I always tell people as Latinos, and this is because we're a Latino group, the toughest challenge we have as Latinos is let's not pigeonhole ourselves to just being Latino. Because I've seen so many talented people, and you get pigeonholed to just being Latino, and we're Americans. We're not only Latinos, we are Americans, but we cannot allow for us to be pigeonholed into just being quote unquote Latinos, but we are proud to be Latinos. That's what I tell people, be proud of my parents. And my journey was one to be the first general manager. And that journey, it continues. Not only to me, it's about giving back. Once you do something, I think one thing about us, we grew up, all of us here, we're fortunate that we were given things, but we're also we want to give 10 times back what was given to us. And that's kind of my journey to be a GM and focus over the years, and exciting to be in the baseball field and be a part of this group right here.
Thank you, Omar. I really appreciate it. And yes, that's a great point. We've all strived to not be pigeonholed. I remember in my career when people would say, why do you have a good relationship with the Latino ball players? And then I tell them, I do, because I'm bilingual, I have that relationship. But some of my closest working relationships are with guys like Billy Wagner, guys like Roy Oswald. My dog is a pup that Roy Oswald gave my middle daughter. And it's about telling our story, bringing our unique stories, but also telling all stories. And we want to go now to Gloria Nevarez, an amazing high school basketball player from Northern California. Gloria, please tell us about your story, how you were a post player in high school and your college career, and how you got to become the first Latina, and I think only Latina, to ever serve as a Division I conference commissioner.
Yeah, and Jesus, I need to correct you because I don't want to discredit you. I was not an amazing basketball player. I was more of a hard try or hustle kid. I grew up in the Bay Area, California. My mother is half Filipina, half Irish from New York. Her parents, first generation US. My father is from Chihuahua, New Mexico. His family crossed the border. I think he was 1 year old. So they grew up in a little mining town in Texas. And, basically his first 20 years of his life were in homes that they built from scratch, 1-bedroom homes. that eventually burnt down, and they ended up moving to the Bay Area in California where they had some family. And this was before we were the tech mecca of the world. I mean, you know, the Santa Clara I grew up in had a lot of orchards and was just, you know, I'm very grateful. I had a lot of privilege, very sleepy little, you know, bedroom community, suburb, had a great California diversity to growing up. My high school is very diverse. Jesus is referencing the fact that my high school basketball team, I was playing under the basket as a post player because most of them were Filipina and of Asian descent and weren't very tall. I'm only 5'8". I was the tallest one on the team. What does that tell you? And, you know, my father was, I couldn't, you know, Jesus, you referenced having daughters. I couldn't have asked for a more supportive father for a tomboy who just wanted to play sports. Didn't want to wear a dress to communion, didn't want to do any of that. And he was just great. He was out there catching my pitches, shagging my shots, and just, there was nothing, you know, he wouldn't support me in doing. And when it became clear that I might be eligible for a scholarship, he put together a VHS videotape of my plays and sent them around. And I ended up getting a scholarship to the University of Massachusetts. And I signed my letter of intent late, so I missed orientation. And so I showed up on campus in the dark of night. The grad assistant for the program picks me up, finds out my dorm reservation was forfeited because the paperwork didn't go through. So they put me in this temporary housing. And here I am in Massachusetts, probably couldn't point to it on a map, going, what have I done? I loved it there, ended up majoring in sport management because that's what all the athletes majored in at that time. And worked out really well for me. But somewhere during my first year, I got a letter in the mail and it said, "Dear student of color." And I was like, student of color? They must have assigned us colors at orientation. I had no idea what color I was. And one of my best friends to this day, Elena Silva, she works in education policy in DC. She goes, "Girl, your color's brown. Just let me break it down for you." So that was really my introduction into what the identity and culture being, you know, California is just such a melting pot. Everyone was kind of some shade of brown. And that's when I really felt the identity, the cultural attachment, and the obligation to advocate and to, you know, help others along the way. Came home, went to law school, didn't want to practice law, did a cup of coffee in a labor litigation firm, and then very quickly jumped to college athletics. And, you know, my parents were like, what are you doing with that law degree? You know? And so I was the first full-time compliance person at San Jose State University. This was back in the day when you had one compliance person for, you know, huge Division I athletic departments. Nowadays, your robust department has 8 to 10, all with law degrees. And so there I was, you know, plugging away, trying to build this thing. And then from there, I went to UC Berkeley, back to their athletic department where I went to law school. And then my first round at the West Coast Conference. I think, you know, my big break came when Joe Castiglione at the University of Oklahoma took this no-name administrator from, you know, a non-football league and said, "Come be one on my senior administrative staff." My first year at Oklahoma, we went to a championship football game with Sam Bradford, an Elite Eight with Blake Griffin, and a Final Four with Courtney Paris. It was sport nirvana. It was amazing. That next year, we had the biggest sport hangover as a city, as a community ever. But it was a lot of fun. And then you know, a search firm came knocking with an opportunity to return to the California Bay Area and work at the Pac-10 at the time, and now the Pac-12. So I came in with Larry Scott's first administration, a whole new senior team, and just, it was amazing. We built a network, we created a football champ game, we moved both basketball tournaments. I took all-star teams to Australia and China. I had to sit outside Chinese jail for 2 days trying to rescue 3 UCLA players for stealing sunglasses. Got to watch a Twitter battle between a B-level celebrity father and the sitting president. It was just surreal. It was good, really good administrative experience for me, and a lot of great memories and a lot of tight friends. And then, yeah, search firm came calling to come back to the WCC. I never thought that job would be open. I mean, for me, it's an ideal situation. And, you know, when I got the job, the issue of, you know, my identity and race came up again, because we realized that I was the first person of Latin American descent ever to serve as a Division I college commissioner. There's only 32 of us. And so, you know, on the one hand, you want to identify by your resume and your skills and experience. On the other hand, you know, you're trailblazing, and, you know, what do you say? How do you talk about it? What do you put in the press release? And it was a real aha moment for me, because, you know, while it identified me personally, it had never been a very public thing for me. And it was just a really, I felt very supported by my presidents, but, you know, it was a heartwarming thing to receive all the feedback and notes from young Latinos and Latinas in the business that are like, finally. So it's been really special.
Well, thank you. I'm sure a lot of you have received the finally text message, the finally quote unquote note. I know I've sent it to Gersson and Omar, and you know, so, and you know, I didn't know Attorney General Gonzales at the time, but I was good friends with his another former Texas Supreme Court. So I sent it to Supreme Court Justice David Medina. But you all had that finally, because you've broken barriers, and thank you. And moving on, what is the best advice? And we have 29 minutes to go. What is the best advice each of you have ever received and you've ever want to give? We'll start with Gloria and move backwards on the alphabet. My wife can do the alphabet backwards. I can't. But Gloria, we'll start with you moving backwards on the alphabet.
You know, I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt that said, you know, the worst crime you could ever do is not support other, I'm butchering the quote, but something about supporting other women. There's a special place in hell for women who don't support other women. That's the quote. So I really feel like, you know, especially in sports where there's so few of us, to make an effort to reach out and support each other, and to trust your gut. That's probably the best piece of information. This is my first time in a leadership position, and it's very easy to question what I think I know I should do. But, you know, the few times I've trusted my gut, you know, it's felt like the right thing to do.
Omar?
Yes. Always make sure you tell your wife, yes, dear. Whatever you say, yes. That's the best advice I ever had. Yes, dear. No problem. That helps. But that being said, wow, I think, you know, yeah, I think I'm always looking at it as I was taught by my parents. Treat others the way you want to be treated. That's one. That's for sure. I try to live by that. But when it comes to competing, I think exactly I like, you know, that one is trust. Go with your first instinct. Trust yourself. Trust yourself, and don't look back. Don't ever look back.
I think you may be on mute. Hey, Sis, you were on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. Attorney General Gonzales, go. What advice would you give?
You know, I learned a lot in my experiences. One that's really, I think, relevant to if you hold positions of authority that are very public, and that is do the right thing, because you're going to be criticized either way. So always just do the right thing, and you know what is the right thing, and you make the decision. You accept the consequences, and then you move on, because the next big decision is probably waiting right around the corner. And so prepare yourself to do the right thing. And I tell people, young kids today who are thinking about a position in politics, is I say it's nothing could be more worthwhile than perhaps a position in sports. But to go in with your eyes open and your armor on, because it can be difficult, and it shouldn't be that difficult, but it is. And so just do the right thing always.
Well, thank you. I made a joke earlier about my wife being able to do the alphabet backwards. I proved today that I don't even know how to do it the right way because I went with Gersson Rosas ahead of Omar and Gloria. So my excuse for everything is I'm English as a second language. My parents were born in Mexico and I didn't learn English until I was 6. But then there's no excuse because the alphabet's in Spanish too. But whatever the case, Gersson, what advice have you received that has stuck with you, and what advice would you give?
Yeah, you surprised me with that order initially, but we'll figure it out here on the fly. But no, I would say, one piece of information that really impacted me, and I try to tell others that are in my position or young individuals in the industry is, as a minority, you worry so much about, hey, can I get the opportunity? Can I get the break? And in reality, you can get overwhelmed by that. I was taught very early by mentors and Dennis Lindsay specifically in Houston. He's like, you can't worry just about the opportunity. You have to worry about being prepared for the opportunity because nothing's going to be given to you. When you get that opportunity, you got to make the most of it. And that really impacted me from the beginning. I knew somebody wasn't going to give me something just for the sake of being a nice person or because they felt like I deserved it. I had to earn it. And whether that was coming in as an entry-level scout or being an assistant high school coach or being a graduate assistant at the university level, I had to become, and I knew my weaknesses. I didn't play in the league. I wasn't a guy who had some of those advantages. So I had to work harder than everybody, and I had to create a niche for myself. I had to look at my strengths and maximize those and try to minimize my weaknesses. My ability to speak 2 languages allowed me to work with agents to help players internationally. So when I got to an NBA team, the ability to scout internationally was one of my first opportunities. And the time that I spent taking step back at the high school level and at the college level allowed me to expand my scouting base. I was fortunate to be a realist about who I was and what my strengths and weaknesses were and try to find opportunities to give myself a chance. So when the opportunity came and as I went through it with the Rockets, when it finally came, I had the credibility and the ability to really take advantage of it because so often we fight for that opportunity, but if we're not prepared for it, we're going to lose the chance to really grow and develop and be who we're passionate about being.
Well, thank you, Gersson. I appreciate that insight. Going back, another question. We'll start with you. There aren't many Latinos in the NBA, but it's extremely popular with Latinos. When Kobe Bryant passed away, they took banda to serenade him at Staples Center. They took mariachi. How do you see the Latino footprint in the NBA growing in terms of players and fan bases? And how, as you know, growing up here in Houston, Latinos love the Rockets. In Dallas, they love the Mavericks. How do you see that growth?
Yeah, no, I think it's a fascinating question, and it's one of the great opportunities one of the great reasons why I was given an opportunity. But basketball is not an American game. It's an international game. And in the NBA specifically, we've gotten to the point where we embrace the international game. The number of international players that we have, the style of play that we have on the court or off the court. The reality is, like a lot of our pro leagues, it's a copycat league. And you look at what San Antonio did with an Argentinian player and a French player and the run that they had of success. I think the eyes of the NBA, whether you're an owner or whether you're a general manager or a coach, you want the best resources to help you be successful. And I was very fortunate that it is an international game and it's a global game, and it takes you places that you never expect. I was very blessed to be a part of the U.S. Olympic team with Coach K in Rio, and that was just the ability of having been a scout and knowing the players around the country and having an international aspect and perspective to basically be the advanced scout for that team. And to be in Rio in South America as a Colombian and part of a gold winning team, like, hey, I'm just a kid from Bogota, Colombia. I'd never played the game, but I was able to go to the highest levels just because of the opportunities, the mentorship that others gave me. And those are things that incredibly speak to not only where our game is, but where it's going. It's not a game of just the NBA. It's an international game that continues to grow. And I'm very blessed to have been part of that Olympic team. I'm very blessed to be part of the NBA's Basketball Without Borders, where we invest in the game throughout the world, because we're basically helping ourselves as we develop players, as we develop coaches, as we develop professional programs. That's only going to raise the level of not only the players, but the game. And we have, to him who much is given, much is required. And that's something from an individual and an organizational perspective is something that I really try to embrace.
Well, thank you. Attorney General Gonzales, you worked for the first Major League Baseball owner who became president. Now you're part of a group who's trying to bring baseball, and they've mentioned how they're trying to get a group that's majority from underrepresented groups. How is that? And you've addressed this a little bit, but how has that experience been different from your legal career, your legal experiences from, dealing as Attorney General, and before that in Texas, in the Texas Supreme Court, and working for the governor here?
Yeah, well, of course, part of our brand, the name we've chosen for the team, if we're so fortunate to get a team, is the Nashville Stars. It would be the first Major League Baseball team named after a team that once played in the Negro Leagues. Bob Kendrick. So we have a very strong relation with the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. Bob Kendrick, who's president of the museum, is on our board. We have a sharing agreement that any merchandise that we sell that has the name Nashville Stars, they get half of it. If we're fortunate to get a franchise, we've committed to have a permanent space in the stadium where the Negro Leagues could have a satellite office or a satellite exhibit area. So we believe diversity is very important. We were talking and promoting diversity well before George Floyd and just all the focus and attention on diversity and racial justice. This was something that we were very much focused on. So Nashville, it's interesting. As you might imagine, Nashville doesn't have the same level of Hispanic presence that exists today in Texas. So that's been a little bit of a shock. But I'm confident that given our brand, and if we persuade Major League Baseball that Nashville can be a net generator producer for the other owners in baseball, that we'll be successful. And I think the people of Nashville have shown themselves that they're interested in sports. We never thought that hockey would be as popular as it is. It helps when you're a winner, of course, which the team has enjoyed success. But we believe that Nashville, at hopefully not too distant future, will be an attractive alternative for Major League Baseball. Is this different? Well, it's very different than the other things that I've done. But as I said in one of my early responses, the thing that attracts me is the complexity, dealing with talented people. And of course, it keeps me connected in a very small way to the game of baseball.
Well, thank you. And this leads a little bit to the next question. You mentioned Latinos in Nashville. My dad's two youngest sisters are in Nashville. And one of them works with Mr. Mike Kerb. So we visit Nashville quite a bit. So if you ever want authentic Mexican food from Jalisco, call Mr. Kerb or call me and we will hook you up. Okay. But speaking of Nashville and education, Vanderbilt University, one of the premier universities in the world, which leads me to this question for Gloria. You were an accomplished basketball player, all San Jose Mercury News team in 1989. What advice would you give other Latinas like my daughters who are scholars and athletes too?
Yeah, I love what sports does for women. There's all kind of data about how women who played sports, whether youth league, high school, it really helps you develop a sense of confidence, a sense of self. And, there's a disproportionate number of women in C-suite positions that have played sports in their background. And so, you don't have to play college. You don't have to play Olympics. Just play. It's a blast, and it provides a bunch of skills and abilities that'll serve you well in life. And I think for me, it really has just been about, do the job, do it well. And sometimes the job sucks. Sometimes it's not fun. I mean, in college sport, you know, someone assigned me to do all men's basketball officiating. That wasn't fun, but you know, you do it well, and then it becomes one of the key things on my resume that stands out when I'm interviewing for a commissioner. So you never know what part of it is going to open the door, but you know, just, you know, try not to skip over any of the small steps on the way.
Well, thank you very much. Omar, you got your first big chance in Montreal, a historic city. And when you had your first opening day, Vera Clemente was there and Rachel Robinson was there. What did it feel like to have those two women married to iconic leaders in supporting you and there for you, and in that city, the city that had Jackie Robinson, what did it mean to you?
Well, it meant a lot, and I asked for them before opening day. I wanted to I asked Vera's, the Clemente family and the Robinson family, and I say this for those that have a little bit of history. Jackie Robinson played for the Royals. Roberto Clemente played for the Royals before he was drafted in Rule 5 to Pittsburgh. So for me, I wanted for them both to be there, because the way I looked at it is like, you know, both these, Clemente had passed away, Jackie had passed away, but I always felt like, you know, I was there because of their struggle. And I want to, even because they were there, it was like they were being there. And basically, you know, Jackie talked about, you know, he wanted someday to see an African-American and or dark person, whatever, to be a third base coach or even a man. Here we are at that moment in time as a Latino, you know, and you talked about Felipe Alou. You know, Felipe Alou, I'll send it to you and you can send it to everybody. He was like, you know, ahead of our time, talking about a Bill of Rights for Latin players. Something that is unimaginable. He was talking about that during that struggle. So to me, being in Montreal, being the first general manager, was a getting there. You know, of course, because of you know, the commissioner Seeley giving me the opportunity, but it was passing the baton. But also, not only that, a responsibility that I knew that I was taking on, because these gentlemen that came before me opened doors for me. And it opened so much door for me in this special place, Montreal, great city, diverse city, international city, everything that they were about and everything that I felt I was about and still about. And just having them there, Vera and the Robinson family there, it was special. And it was meant to be. But I know that I was giving this opportunity, but I had a responsibility to do the best that I can to not only, you know, because of them, but to also open doors for others. And, you know, and they were, to me, Jackie Robinson, Hank Aaron, that generation, you know, Felipe Alou, Roberto Clemente, Juan Marichal, that generation, you know, those were our heroes. Those are the guys that we looked up to. And here we are now. They're, you know, because of them, we have that opportunity to, you know, pass the baton to others. And now, as I look at baseball right now, when you look at the game and all our great stars, when you look at baseball, the game is going to be even more Latino. But not only is it Latino, all the great stars are Latino. I mean, when you're talking about stars, is look at the game, whether it's just look around, you know, all these kids that are out there. But that was the feeling. It was passing the baton from those guys, and that's why I asked for both of them to be there.
Well, thank you for bringing it up. And yes, I've talked to Mr. Alou, and he's going to our Esquina and he are working on a project on the Latino Bill of Rights, hopefully for the 60th anniversary. He wrote that in 1962, and the copy of the Latino Bill of Rights is on my nightstand right there. But thank you for bringing it up.
And what I like to do is get it to, I think we should get it to everybody that's a participant in this to look at it. And it's just so because it was issues that were back in 1962, And here we are in 2021. And it's just, I think, I previously said, don't look back when you do make a decision. But I also think you do have to look, when you do look back, you look back to reflect, to make things better.
Thank you very much. And I have to acknowledge, I just saw Mr. David Marinus, who wrote the foremost biography of Roberto Clemente, which is, if I turn over to my left, I could pull the book, but you'll have to believe me, the Clemente. So I just saw him on the screen. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Marinus. And Professor Celso Castillo from Vanderbilt University would like to ask a question. What is your question, sir?
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. Thank you so much, Jesus, Andrew, for the event. So I'm an associate professor of history here at Vanderbilt, and with Andrew participate in the Civil Rights and Sports Working Group. And one of the experiences I've had in the classroom when it comes to teaching about these issues and the questions that kind of repeatedly come up, and has to do with leadership, both at the collegiate and professional levels, at the management level, right? And how you respond to complex and in some people's opinions controversial situations, and we've certainly seen a ton of that the last 5 years. You can go back as far as you want, even beyond 5 years, but a common reference point, for example, with Kaepernick. And so I'm kind of, one of the things that we struggle with trying to understand is the kind of decision making that goes into management's process in terms of how do you respond, right? I mean, it's often discussed that, like, it's bad business, or studies show, or you don't want to alienate certain fan bases, right? And I'm just kind of curious how I would be able to explain that better in the classroom. What exactly that data and that science is, that like it is bad business to call out racism and other structural problems in society, and then to the extent that maybe it can change if there are other people in power, right? So anyway, so I wanted to just kind of put that out there as an experience I've been having in teaching these issues. And thanks again.
Thank you very much for the question. Gloria, Gersson, Omar, would one of you like to tackle that question, or how and you could probably address it from your, how do you approach it in college? I know some universities have decided now not to play the national anthem while the players are on the court or on the field. How would, Gloria, would you like to tackle that first, Gersson second, Omar third, or would one of you like to tackle it for the whole group?
Thank you, Jesus. And I think the question is extremely, on point, especially in these times. After the murder of George Floyd, our league just happened to have our annual league meetings where all of our presidents, athletic directors, faculty reps all came into the room, and, social justice was the topic of the day. And it's my view that, it's not one size fits all. And our league, although being in some of the most diverse cities in the world, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, our athletic department staffs are really not that diverse. And so we really, our presidents wanted to 10 white men presidential board wanted to capitalize on the national attention and really thought, what can we do that would create a lasting and meaningful change in our league? And for us, it was a hiring commitment that we called the Russell Rule. And, that was what fit us at the time, because to your point, data-driven analytics on our demographics showed that we weren't reflective of either the cities we were in nor our athletic populations. So it was a way to really talk about the science and how it creates better business and recruiting and coach retention, and then really enact policy that meets up with that. Since then, I've talked to a lot of conferences and leagues in and out of sport about a hiring commitment, and it's not one size fits all. It's really about determining what that end goal is, what the issue might be for your organization, and then creating policy to match.
I guess I'm a little slow on the uptick today, but it just dawned on me. Gersson, you were in the middle, your city was in the middle of the storm.
Yeah.
How did the Timberwolves address that? tell, can you address the question and also tell us how you addressed it?
Yeah, Jesus, great question, great point, Professor. I mean, I would tell you from my experiences being here at the epicenter of the current social justice movement with George Floyd's death. It's I will be to be fair, it's different for everybody, and ownership has a big part of how you can handle these situations. For us here with the Timberwolves in the NBA, it really shook our league and it shook our players. And there was a very strong alignment from ownership, from the executive side, on the corporate side, and on the basketball side, that this was something we had to address head on. And it was a situation where once we knew the facts and we understood what was going on, we went to our players first. And we got a professional that could come in and talk us through exactly what was going on, that was familiar with those types of situations and incidents that had happened in other places in our country. And we brought him in. We got on a big Zoom with all our players, all our front office, all our corporate side, and we just talked through it. Our players really led the day and really shared their feelings and how passionate they were about what was going on. I was very fortunate that I worked for an owner that said, hey, we have to do the right thing, and gave us the resources to do it. And it wasn't as much words as it is actions. And it was our commitment to our players, our commitment to our community, our commitment to addressing those issues, and finding qualified individuals that could help us impact with real change. We set up conversations with our mayor and our police chief, with our players, to really put a face to the issue. There were rallies throughout the city here in the middle of a pandemic, and our players took the lead. Myself, our head coach, our CEO, were all together on the front lines because, number one, we felt it was the right thing. But number two, this was an opportunity for us as a young organization. I've been here a year and a half, for us to really come together. And it's the good and the bad of sports and tragedy. It's, I always say, we don't pick these situations, they pick us. And then it's up to us to see how we respond to it. And I will tell you, Jesus, we really came together as an organization. We really connected with our players and understood them at a higher level. We were able to have high level conversations that in a typical season, you're not able to have. Experiences, perspectives, and understanding. And to me, it hit home. Like, George Floyd was a guy that moved from Houston to Minneapolis, just like me. It could have been anybody else in those type of situations. And it brought a sensitivity to our players, and it brought a rallying cry. We have the youngest team in the NBA, but these guys grew up. They showed a lot of maturity. They showed a lot of character, and we really needed to support them as we did everything that we could. And it wasn't about just protesting games or not doing this or not doing that. It's let's create tangible change, and not just now because this incident happened, but how our organization functions and what we do from this day forward.
Well, thank you. Omar had brought up the Latino Bill of Rights, and we've talked about Felipe Alou. Felipe Alou was one of the first athletes who talked about why he didn't want to stand for the U.S. national anthem after the U.S. invaded his country. And then Roberto Clemente, he didn't want to play immediately after Martin Luther King was shot. So Latinos have a history of standing up for social justice. Omar, would you like to tackle this question, or could we?
I will tackle it maybe quick, because I thought Gersson said he could not say it better. And we lived it. We did not live it in Minnesota, but we lived it in New York. And I think from the leadership, the key points that I see, and what Gersson said, it starts at the top. It starts with ownership. It starts at the top. It starts with ownership, commitment to when these things pop up. But I think what Gersson said is exactly what we went through, and I can speak that it's really about listening to the players. It's so important to listen to the players, because, and they watch in these moments, players are super smart. And I can tell you as a person that not only has worked for Major League Baseball, I work with a team, but I have also been on the other side listening to me at the Players Association. And it's so important. And I know when we lived it through it and situations that we've gone through it, it is so important to listen to the players. And they know if you feel it, they know if you're real. And when you do that, you can take a situation that's a negative and make it a positive, long-term positive, because they will remember. Players will remember. And that's what we did as an organization with the Mets, and I'm pretty sure. But it starts with owners. And we know being, whether we're president, general manager, whatever you are, it starts at the top. Our experience was our ownership was fully supportive of, whatever we needed to do. And the players need to know that you have their back, you're supportive, but listen to them. And I think once we listen to them, I think we'll all become better and we make better decisions.
Well, thank you very much. I shouldn't be surprised, but this hour went by quickly, and I know our panelists are very busy and have busy schedules, and we promised to keep this in an hour so that everybody could get back to their busy lives. But I want to thank Vanderbilt University, the Sports and Society Initiative, Andrew Marinus, Omar Minaya, Gloria Nevarez. I just muted myself. I'm sorry about that. I'd like to thank Andrew Marinus at Vanderbilt University Sports and Society Initiative, Omar Manaya, Gloria Nevarez, Gersson Rosas, Attorney General Gonzales for taking their time out. Our Esquina aspires to amplify Latino voices and Latino stories, to inspire. And by joining us today, you help people see the brilliance that lies within the Latino community. What I think, Gloria, listening to you as a father of three, you hit close to my heart, and I vow to be more like your dad in supporting my kids. I do. I'm not at their stuff all the time, and I don't catch the bullpen as my wife does, but you inspired me today, and thank you very much. Omar, I love you. You've inspired me for 20, and Gersson, you know what you mean to, we have a lot of mutual friends here in Houston. People have been texting me, and Attorney General Gonzales, I've told you, I've written in my book what you mean to me as a Latino, so thank you very much for sharing your stories and for helping us amplify Latino voices. And everybody else, thank you for joining us today, for taking time out of your busy schedule. Hopefully after the pandemic, we'll be able to visit Vanderbilt. We have many more of these. I have Latinas who want to show the Latina influence and voice. That'll be our next one right before baseball starts. We're going to gather some of the Latinas in baseball. But thank you for joining our Esquina and for helping us amplify Latino stories and voices. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Thanks
All
all.
the best.
See you guys.